Today on CityCast Boise, I'm rounding up the news of the week with Boise State Public Radio's Jimmy Dawson. Nampa's new Pride Festival is already under attack, and city leaders there seem to be struggling with their PR response. Meanwhile, a North Idaho far-right blogger loses a defamation lawsuit, and a Boise comedy icon is recording her first album. It's Friday, May 31st. I'm Frankie Barnhill in for Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Jimmy, happy Friday. Thanks for being here.
Happy Friday, Frankie. Good to be here.
Yeah, what a wild week in some news, specifically out of Nampa. We have to talk about this. So Nampa is celebrating its first ever Pride Festival next Sunday, June 9th at Lakeview Park. But the event has faced quite the roller coaster this week. And wouldn't you know it, it started with a Facebook post.
No, social media starting like a firestorm. Yeah.
So remind us what happened, how this all kicked off.
Well, yeah. So KTVB did a story on how, this is the first Canyon County Pride event. It's 2024. And they're feeling comfortable enough to do that, hosting it in Nampa. And, according to a spokesperson for the city of Nampa, there were about 2,500 comments on this particular Facebook post about the news story, many of them urging the city to cancel it, not allow, the Pride Festival to take place in the city-owned park, which prompted them to issue a statement from Mayor Debbie Kling, which, I'll read verbatim, quote,
yeah, please do.
Yeah, while this event does not reflect the personal beliefs and convictions of myself, the Nampa City Council, and many living in Nampa who have already reached out to us requesting it be canceled, the advice of our legal counsel was that the city of Nampa must recognize the protected First Amendment rights of those scheduling and involved in this event, end quote. Which is true because, First Amendment rights, the government can, put a little bit of guardrails around that, tell you where you can hold an event or protest or whatever, tell you the time you can do it, maybe charge you a fee to do it.
Right.
But, they can't tell you that you cannot do that on public property.
Yeah. I feel like there was a lot in that statement to parse, certainly. And I think the First Amendment piece, of course, stands out. It's like you had to ask your lawyers. Feels like pretty obvious that this is definitely protected by the First Amendment. But as far as it's just fascinating to me that they were so concerned about KTVB doing this story, posting on KTVB's Facebook, and then all these people. And yeah, the comment section is wild. And I do not recommend anyone with high blood pressure go and look at the comments because they're crazy. But just the fact that the city's response, the PR team, the mayor decided we must pay attention to this and make a statement, is just an interesting choice. I feel like I'm not. It wasn't even a City of Nampa Facebook page, that was inciting this. It was a news outlet story and their own Facebook page. I thought that was fascinating.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting. But if you think about 2,500 people, even though Nampa is a pretty large city, especially for Idaho. It's not an insignificant part of their population. It's certainly single digits percentage wise, right?
Of course.
But
it's also hard to know how many of those people are actually living in Nampa. Right. Yeah.
Right. But it's, I don't know. You're right. It does seem to me wow, this was a big response for something that wasn't even in their social media channels.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to the fact that the mayor inserted herself in the statement, which we've seen. I mean, we see politicians do this. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but she definitely inserted herself and made it very clear when she referred to her own personal beliefs and convictions of myself, which is a very confusing phrasing, side note. But and at first I was like, what does she mean by that? Personal, it could mean anything. Is she talking she doesn't want queer people to gather in the park? She doesn't want a pride festival that is at that part? I don't know. It was hard to know. So I was following KTVB, followed up on this yesterday, and they interviewed Mayor Debbie Kling, and quote, this is what she said, what she meant by when it comes to personal belief. She said, "I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. That is a God-given thing," unquote. Which is, she also went on to say, sometimes it doesn't matter what you say, it's going to get you in trouble, unquote, which I was like, yeah. That's probably true. And indeed, I think this has gotten, at least in many people's mind, her in some hot water, or her PR team. Who knows? We'll see. I don't think she's up for election this coming year, but or the city council. There might be some city council members who are up, but just an interesting back and forth PR issue this week, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let alone the homophobia that we're seeing that's very blatant, certainly in that comment section on Facebook and the response. But, this isn't the first time, of course, that a pride event in Idaho at a city park has been targeted. Can you remind us what happened a couple years ago in Coeur d'Alene?
Right. So you had the white nationalist group called Patriot Front, roughly 30 people who were planning to go to the Pride Fest in Coeur d'Alene and disrupt that whole situation. I believe the quote was on the note that police found at the scene when they arrested all these people, establish a, quote, confrontational dynamic, which... not really sure what all that means, but you had people, dressed up with like kind of riot gear and all kinds of other things. They were all booked. And as we found out earlier this year, several of the cases were dismissed, including the group's leader, Thomas Rousseau, had his charges dismissed in that case. But another thing that happened that year at the Pride Festival was, like most Pride festivals, I believe, have drag shows. And one performer was, dancing and doing their set in front of the crowd. And one of the far-right bloggers in Kootenai County, Summer Bushnell, posted on her far-right blog, which has, several hundred to, thousands of followers up there, that this drag performer had exposed himself in front of children and uploaded a video with a blurred out crotch. Now, police investigated this and saw the unedited video, which they say had zero exposure. And so this drag performer sued Summer Bushnell. There was a week-long trial recently, and about a week ago, the drag artist won nearly $1.2 million after that false accusation.
Right. Fascinating because, thinking about the Nampa statement referring to free speech and First Amendment rights. And then there's a limit to free speech when it comes to this case because this far-right blogger, now the court came down, the lawsuit was decided that it was defamation. And that's the line there. I just wonder... Again, we've seen so many different times where Pride festivals in Idaho, it's like every year that something is either threatened or targeted in some way, and this backlash. Were you at all surprised, I guess, by seeing what the Nampa Canyon County Pride organization is going through this week?
No, not necessarily. Like you mentioned, it's kind of every year, every other year you have... whether it's the run-of-the-mill protests or something much more organized like we saw again in 2022 with Boise Pride and the state Republican Party officially telling people to pull their sponsorships and go out and protest the youth drag show that was happening that year. It's not really a surprise to me, no.
Yeah. I guess what is a surprise, is just knowing how many people are queer in Nampa are in this community, and now we're having to hear from their mayor, from their city council, this what feels like, I'm sure, is an incredibly unwelcome message. But of course, they're still planning to go forward with the event. And in fact, Did you see the Canyon County Pride group? They put together a GoFundMe. I think it actually started before all of this, before the Nampa statement came out, and they've like well exceeded their goal by this point.
They have, yeah. They've got at least when I checked a few minutes ago, as we're recording on Thursday, they had more than $12,000, which their original goal was $10,000. So
yeah,
pretty big on that part.
And of course, again, we don't know how many people are actually in Nampa who are donating, but probably lots of folks in Boise, et cetera. And yeah, seeing that Nampa being a city of over 100,000 people has never had a Pride festival of its own. Plenty of people from Nampa, of course, come to Boise's Pride Festival, which is in September these days. That's when it's going to be this year as well. So to get their own event, I'm sure feels really, really special. And hopefully there'll be no more shenanigans that they have to deal with between now and June 9th when the event is supposed to take place. Okay, Jimmy, this story you reported on a couple weeks ago, but we haven't talked about it here on CityCast Boise's Friday show yet because, what happened last week? The primary. The primary election kind of subsumed things for a second there, but definitely don't want to lose sight of this, which is that kids aren't allowed or aren't going to be allowed at the Donnelly Library anymore. What's going on?
Yeah, this is the first major fallout from House Bill 710 that passed earlier this year at the Idaho legislature, which basically says that anyone, regardless of whether they live in Idaho, can file a written complaint against a public or private library saying, I don't like this book. They don't have to say why necessarily or, prove that it is objectionable or, quote, harmful to children. And within 60 days of receiving that written notice, any library must move that particular book to an adults-only section. Now, Donnelly is a pretty small town. It's just south of McCall.
Yeah.
Has a few hundred people living there, and their library is about 1,000 square feet. It's in this old log cabin, and they say that they just don't have the space to properly separate the materials in a way that would comply with the new law, which is starting on July 1st. So they say that they are banning nearly every unaccompanied minor. Kids with their parents can go in as long as they're supervised, or if you are part of their paid after school or summer programs and the parent basically signs this extensive waiver saying that they aren't going to sue, then they can go in. But otherwise, they can't even go in to use the bathroom. So because this library is so small, they hold all of their activities outdoors anyway.
Okay.
So, children might be able to go to whatever random event that they have going on outside, but they won't even be allowed inside to use the restroom. So
wow.
Yeah, it's
was this preemptive though, Jimmy? Because of course the bill the law hasn't gone into effect. You said July 1st, right? Is when
correct.
This and a bunch of other laws will go into effect, of course. So this seems like, a preemptive move on the library's part where they're like, you know what, we don't even want to risk it. We don't want to have to deal with any of these complaints. We're just going to make this change now.
And that was one of the things that, library directors, especially in small and rural places, told state legislators when they were considering these bills over the past several years, like, hey, we just physically do not have the room to properly comply with what you're trying to tell us to do. And as a result, it's going to mean that kids won't have access to the library unless they have an adult present. And that's not always the case, especially in the summer. I remember I would ride my bike to the Lewiston Library. Thankfully, it was only a few blocks away from my house at the time, check out a bunch of books while my parents were at work and just kept myself busy, not to mention volunteering there when I was a teenager to help with the summer reading program. When I spoke to the library director, Donnelly Library Director Sherry Shaline, she says that some of the most frequent patrons there are homeschooled children whose parents,
sure.
drop them off during the school day for a couple hours, tell them to, hey, go finish your schoolwork and then read some books, and I'll come back and pick you up after I've done some, a grocery run or whatever they have to do. And that's not going to be able to happen anymore, at least under these new regulations.
Yeah. So not just a summer problem for kids out of school in the summer, but an all year issue now. And yeah, the nearest library for kids and families in Donnelly, is it in McCall now, I guess?
It's going to be in McCall, which just opened its brand new, recently expanded library.
Yeah, but I mean that's a drive, that's a process, that's not it's not riding your bike to your neighborhood library by any means anymore. Do you have a sense for like what's the next shoe to drop? So this was the first library that we've heard that has had to completely close itself off inside to kids. Do you think there's going to be more?
Certainly people who advocated against these types of library bills think that it's just a matter of time before that's the case. I mean, we heard from even bigger libraries like the Idaho Falls executive director was saying that, look, we're going to have to hire someone because of their particular space considerations. They're going to have to hire someone to camp out in front of the elevator, to make sure that kids don't go up to a certain floor, which has adult materials, and they don't necessarily have someone posted up there. So it's not just rural libraries, but they certainly seem to be taking the brunt of this at the moment.
Yeah. Well, let's round things up with our pick of the week. So it could be a story you thought was interesting or funny or weird, or it could be something you're excited about or an event or something like that. What's your pick of the week, Jimmy?
My pick of the week is going camping for the first time this year. Super excited about it. Weather looks great, even though it's only going to be in the 60s. But, it's end of May, early June. So can't complain too much about that.
Where are you going to go?
Oh, going up around the McCall area. So hanging out with a few friends, hopefully going mountain biking a little bit, and just doing some good old nature walks. Maybe some fishing.
That sounds ideal. We're actually going to publish an episode about kind of beginner camping places to check out for folks who want to respect the outdoors and not be a jerk, but also want to learn a little bit about where to go. Do you have any tips for people, like if someone who might be starting out camping?
Yeah, I mean, just start out, ease yourself into it. Don't feel like you need to be one of those people that you probably see, downtown or in the North End who look super rugged and outdoorsy, and that you need to I need to go on this week-long backpacking trip by myself. No, go car camping. Go to the national forests. You almost always, most of these campgrounds, you can drive in with your vehicle. You pay not a whole lot of money usually, for the privilege to camp there, and just do it overnight. Do a single nighter, get used to the process, and just have fun. If you forgot some stuff, oh well. Just bring, the basics, your water, your food, some way to get rid of the trash if your particular campground doesn't have a dumpster in it. Bring something to pack all of your garbage out, and try not to stress too much about it.
Yeah, great advice. Also smart that you're going early in June. I know it could be a little wet, could be a little chilly, depends, but that not the worst thing to be around a campfire and being bundled up. So good idea to go when it's not too busy as well.
Yeah. What about you, Frankie? What are you doing this week?
Yeah, well, I'm not actually going to this. I wish I was. I have plans, but I definitely think everyone else who is sticking around in town and is a fan of comedy should definitely go to Sophie Hughes' comedy album recording at the Neurolux. Have you heard of Sophie, Jimmy?
I absolutely have, and I've seen them.
I know. Sophie's incredible. A trans comedian, big time leader in the comedy scene for years. And This is going to be Sophie's first album recording, though, so long time coming. I died laughing when I've seen Sophie perform before, so tickets are still available for the 9 p.m. show at Neurolux. And I actually we'll link to an episode we had Sophie on. Really, I mean, hearkening back to our first conversation about Nampa and what's been going on with the backlash to Pride there, talking like really very frankly about how ugly people can be and how violent, honestly, people can be against trans people in Boise. But this particular show, you might cry, you might laugh, it might be a little bit of everything, and I definitely recommend it. We'll put a link to the show note in the show notes to the show to go check that out if you don't have any plans this weekend.
Man, yeah, I'm sad that I'm going to miss it, but definitely looking forward to, buying the album.
For real. Okay, Jimmy, well, good luck camping. Have so much fun. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Frankie. Always good to talk.
And real quick before you go, if you are into our Friday News Roundup podcast like this, I have another show you should definitely check out. Our pals at CityCast Denver are doing a new narrative series called Lauren Boebert Can't Lose. I'm sure you've heard of Representative Lauren Boebert. Her make or break primary is in June, and so they'll be releasing episodes on a dedicated feed leading up to the primary. There's 2 episodes out already, and they're both great. The podcast dives into Boebert's, scandalous moments, how she exploded onto the scene with her attention-grabbing antics, and, her troubling and fascinating place in our political culture. Tomorrow, you will actually get a special taste because we're going to drop a special episode all about her gun-themed restaurant in the town of, wait for it, Rifle, Colorado. Sounds like it could be an Idaho town name. You can find the whole series anywhere you get your podcasts by searching Lauren Boebert Can't Lose. All right, that's all for today here on CityCast Boise. The show was produced by Evelyn Avitia, Lindsay Van Allen, Selena C.A. Reynolds, and me, Frankie Barnhill. Blake Hunter and Adrian Gonzalez wrote our Hey Boise newsletter this week. And our music is by local band Up As The Down Is The. Be sure to come back on Monday for some beginner suggestions for where to camp this summer. See you then.